Aloha, my name is Jeremy Vaney, and I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight, hosting the Living Mystery Symposium 2021, Diversity and Consciousness. When we talk about consciousness, we generally these days talk about oneness. So what happens to all the other consciousness within that oneness? And when we talk about oneness and consciousness, we generally talk just about humans, right? So animals, anyone? Plants, fungi, like the universe at large? What happens to these other consciousnesses when we think about this? And where does our thinking on consciousness come from? These are questions that we're going to be tackling in different ways. We are also going to be talking about human consciousness, because kind of like how we exclude animals and plants and everything else, when we talk about human consciousness, us westernized brainiac people with the separate self-sense who believe that interconnectivity doesn't exist until we quote-unquote discover it, we therefore tend to leave out those we live alongside the earth with, indigenous peoples all around who have never separated from nature. So when we talk about diversity of consciousness in that sense, we are talking about at least those two minds that are right here on Earth in the form of human beings. So I think get ready for a fantastic journey, the likes of which you're not going to be seeing anywhere else. So phone a friend. Let them know about this, because tonight we're going to be kicking it off in an indigenous way with Tiokasin Ghosthorse of the Lakota and Lehua Lopez, who is Hawaiian, and I will sit back and just look like a powered down robot as these two people, friends of mine who have never met before, come together to talk about some of these issues and really set the stage for what's to come over the course of the weekend. Now, if you have questions for Tiokasin, Lehua, or the other speakers, Dennis McKenna, Whitley Strieber, Jeff Kripal, or even me, feel free to email them to me, jeremy@ourundoing.com, or on Sunday, we're all doing a live roundtable together. So Sunday, there will be chat, wherever you're watching this, there should be like a chat box. And if you ask your questions in the chat box, I will be able to read them. So either way, you can either write to me, jeremy@ourundoing.com, or chat it up in the chat box on Sunday, and I will try my best to get everyone's questions in there. All right, before we go, and just get into the program, which we kind of have to do because, you know, like if I were to do my own presentation right now, I think it would put you in one mind frame, and then this conversation is a whole other mind frame. This conversation with Tiokasin and Lehua requires an active listening skill. So the active listening skill is, well, relax. Relax everything else. Relax your judgments, relax your body, relax your bouncing what you're hearing off of your body of knowledge because you want to figure out what makes sense or what makes sense to you, and all. Throw all that out and just really, in a meditative way, listen without the blockage of yourself getting in the way. Just really connect with what they're saying. And I think that the conversation will open up for you in a dynamic way that people who don't do that are going to miss out on. So there you go. So with that, I will circle back to what I was going to say, which is my thanks. My thanks to Joe Gooch for the music. My thanks to the speakers, of course, who I'll be thanking all throughout this, and especially to my lovely wife, Carol, who is smart enough to not want to be on camera. I'm the dumb one in the family, so this is what you get. Thank you, Carol, for being a partner in this. Thank you, everyone who is involved, and thank you all for showing up. I hope this is as amazing an experience for you as the little kid in me knows it's going to be. Okay, let's get to it. Let's kick off the weekend and set the tone with Tiokasin Ghosthorse and Lehua Lopez.
Lehua Lopez, a 72-year-old part native Hawaiian, was born and raised in Hawaii and descends from a long line of Pele worshippers. Pele is the volcano goddess. She received her master's degree in cultural anthropology, specializing in indigenous spirituality and the stories of Pele, at the University of New Mexico. Ms. Lopez has taught keiki, children, and adult classes in Hawaiian culture for more than 40 years. She currently lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she teaches the metaphysics and mysticism of Hawaiian culture. She also conducts ceremonies for babies being born, people in love, and those who experience traumatic events. Ms. Lopez often talks to Jeremy and Carol on the phone just to tweak their sanity. She is a gifted presenter and delights her audiences with mesmerizing stories and complex insights. Tiokasin Ghosthorse, Cheyenne River Lakota Nation of South Dakota, is an international speaker on peace, indigenous, and Mother Earth perspectives. He spoke as a 15-year-old at the United Nations, Lake Geneva, Switzerland. He is an active board member of Simply Smiles and the Center for Earth Ethics. Tiokasin speaks frequently at venues such as Yale University's School of Divinity, Ecology, and Forestry. As if that doesn't keep him busy enough, he is also the founder, host, and executive producer of the 29-year-old First Voices Radio, formerly First Voices Indigenous Radio, a weekly one-hour live program syndicated to nearly 100 public community and commercial radio stations in the US and Canada. Awarded New York City's Peacemaker of the Year in 2013, Tiokasin was a 2016 nominee for a Nobel Peace Prize from the International Institute of Peace Studies and Global Philosophy. As a master musician and teacher of magical ancient and modern sounds, Tiokasin performs worldwide and has been featured at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine, Lincoln Center, Madison Square Garden, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Apollo Theater, and many other venues. Tiokasin serves on boards of several charitable organizations dedicated to bringing non-Western education to Native and non-Native children. He is a perfectly flawed human being and a sun dancer in the cosmology of the Lakota Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to your hearts, Tiokasin Ghosthorse and Lehua Lopez.
Well, here we are, kicking this off with Tiokasin Ghosthorse and Lehua Lopez. Aloha, Lehua. Tiokasin, welcome. Thank you both for doing this.
Thrilled to do this.
Yeah, I'm totally, me too. I'm here. That's good. I'm here.
Present. All right. Well, I guess we, maybe foolishly, I'll agree that I would kick things off with a question of sorts. So if you will allow me, I will read this. And Lehua, if you want to, whatever comes to mind, take it first, and then Tiokasin, and we'll just go from there and see how this all pans out.
Okay.
So this is what came to me as something that I think is probably needed as we move forward with this conference, even, which is that with a westernized mind, knowledge and arrogance often go hand in hand. Knowing more is having more, and we are, if nothing else, a have-more society. So knowledge becomes part of the have-have-not hierarchy that we usually ascribe to material wealth. Is this because, by and large, knowledge comes to us as dead scripts of the past, memorized and regurgitated, as opposed to natural cultures that nurture the life of the individual with stories and lessons throughout one's life? And here I am trying to read my writing. Does this type of teaching keep knowledge, the natural type, does that keep knowledge a present action? Is it akin to understanding that the ancestors are all around us all of the time, so that past is present and the future is therefore included, and not projected as a distant time we must strive to get to? In summary, in Hawaiian culture, in Lakota culture, is all time now, and does that understanding, if so, inform all aspects of your lives, including how you treat knowing and speak knowledge? I leave it to you, Lehua.
Wow. Well, we're going to have to unpack that question a little bit, because you packed everything in there. Let's begin with time. As almost all indigenous cultures, Hawaiian culture is all about the cycles of time. That time comes in repeated waves and circles of being, not being, of death and life and birth. If we understand that death and life and time are cyclical, then we have to expect that we understand what's going on in our lives as also being cyclical. We look to our ancestors and we look to our kupuna, our elders, to tell us stories of what happened in the past, both their lives and in the lives of the ancestors, to understand and to know what to expect in our own lives going forward in the cycle that we're in now. And I'm trying to understand when you talked about gaining and understanding knowledge from dead scripts, Western culture has a scientific mind and a scientific way of understanding what's going on. The script that they use has to be informed by the length, the breadth, the width, and other kinds of measurements to prove that something is there and how it got there and where it got there and why it got there. We don't necessarily have that way of understanding knowledge within our indigenous cultures. However, as observers of the natural world and of time and of events and processes like rain and hail, we do understand this kind of scientific understanding of what goes on in the world. And actually, those dead scripts in the scientific world get changed. I am very, very much, I honor the physicists of today because they've had to eat crow and become more humble in understanding the physical processes of the quantum world as well as the Einsteinian world of general relativity. And they keep being forced to change their dead scripts to understand what's going on. I appreciate that. I appreciate that because I too gain from their knowledge, as well as the stories of my ancestors, basically about how to live in today's world. And let's face it, Western scientists are warning everybody, not only each other, but generations alive now, governments, and everybody else, that the world has been screwed up by humans, and we have got to stop doing the way we're doing things now, because the scientific script is telling us it's only going to get worse. And we're going to end up losing billions of people in the decades to come unless something's done. So, how do we understand the past and the present and the future? We understand them by going back to the stories of our ancestors, informed by what we observe today, informed by what's happening with the ocean, what's happening with the sky, what's happening with our skin and our plants and our food and the fish in the ocean. Yes, the stories help us, but we also continue to observe and understand. It's not that we are apart from nature, and so we observe nature and we record nature and we look at nature as a subject matter apart from ourselves. We are, as people, we are in nature. We are part of nature. We are part of whatever experiment is going on, and we have no choice about that.
Thank you. Tiokasin?
Well said, Lua and Lehua.
Yes.
And I'm
Thank
often
you.
wondering names. What do names mean?
Yes.
What are we naming in this language that to us is a foreign language, right? We're speaking English, and yet your Hawaiian language and my Lakota language are so similar in base as it honors Earth and respects Earth all the time. So the intelligence that comes from the Earth where we belong often tells me of the consciousnesses of all the intelligences, the elemental, the earth, wind, fire, and what else am I missing? Earth, wind, fire, and water. So all of these elemental consciousnesses, intelligences make up who we are. And the further we are away from that intelligence of these elements, the more we become technical human doings rather than the organic human beings that we are. You see, and what I hear you saying, Lehua, is the fact that we have taken this other way of of trying to be something other than we are. Because in the Lakota language, there's no word for or thought to be. To be,
Ah,
yes, to be what other than
ah,
you are. So we are always in place and fully conscious as elements are. They're not in the future or in the past. That time construct only happens within certain human propensity to try to find their identity. So, as a result, we have a whole country called the United States in search of themselves. And they're in search of themselves by accumulating information. As much as information has turned into greed and who owns it. So now the knowledge that that information has turned into, so-called, is not experienced knowledge. There's no wisdom in it, and that's why it always changes and appears to be new. Whereas
yes.
when we are in place, we understand everything is moving around us, but we're we're slow. We slow down, so that we observes us rather than self-observing it. Because all life on this planet has its own, I don't like the word time, has its own rhythm. So the rhythm that we have as indigenous folks is a lot longer on the land in Hawaii and Turtle Island, is the fact that it still speaks through us, and we understand. So anywhere I go, indigenous peoples who know who they are themselves and where their people are and come from, they understand that the message has always been bigger than us. The message of Earth has always been bigger than us, and whatever information and knowledge we accumulate, is that our knowledge has turned into quote unquote wisdom, and that's experienced, right? So it's the experience that really counts. And we have non-natives who say they gather facts. They say they can delineate a plant into a stalk, a stem, a leaf, but they don't know the application of that. And they're giving them foreign names, and yet that plant may not want to be called such and such, but the original medicine name that you have given to the medicines in Hawaii, as well as we have given names to, because it was this way. Lehua, is that we asked them, the beings, the plants, the medicine, what are you called? What do you call yourself? And
Ah,
they would tell us, right? So we use those names rather than us coming with a like, I have a name for you, and I'm going to subjugate you, and I'm going to dominate you, and I'm going to objectify you, and therefore this is what you are because I am in control, right? And within the
right.
Western pattern of education, it takes 12 years to learn how to become reflexive to authority, from the first grade to the 12th grade. And that authority doesn't exist in nature because we're speaking a relational language, and that knowledge is even keel with who we are or aren't. Because if you see nature, they're speaking abundance, and so indigenous folks that I know who they are always speaking in generosity and abundance, and that's the greatest wealth, is to have appreciation, and that's the intelligence of the earth also. And I don't like to say the or the, because that's separating the intelligence of earth. And what she gives to us is actually what in response we appreciate. And so it's this rhythm and this abundance, and this lacking of language doesn't exist. And we can't even be mean in our language. This We can't be mean. I can't call Jeremy a skunk, because that that is being disrespectful to a skunk.
That's
You
right.
see? And so we cannot be mean in our languages. And that when I go home and people are talking the language, we're all laughing. We're just
Laughing,
laughing, and just everything is funny. And it just, like, what laughing does to you, it's so healthy, right? And so
right?
we're exuding, we're expressing the same feelings as nature in constant creation, and not changing information according to humans, but changing the rhythm, keeping us in rhythm, And I think that's what this conversation and others that we will hold is not about accumulating what a plant gives to us, but what a plant has already told us as indigenous folks. And that's why we can't not leave the backbone that she has given to us. And I think that is inherent in all human beings. Sooner or later, they will realize, and especially nowadays, I'm hearing it. And as you know, Lehua, is we didn't hear all this environmental talk when we were
No,
young, and
no.
they thought, oh, those crazy native people, they're now everybody's talking it, and now it's making a lot of woo 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 type of mentality that we're gonna trip with this plant and we're gonna find information with that plant, but there's no respect for it. You're not asking it, and that's kind of like, oh, that's just a little old mumbo jumbo. We don't want to mess with that because that has nothing to do with our reality. So I put it this way, and I've told Jeremy before, is it's the Western thought process. They're always trying to solve the mystery, and it's making them crazy. And with Native people, we have accepted the mystery, and that's why we are more at peace with Earth. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love your idea about understanding the rhythm of life and the rhythm of time and the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of earth. And it's interesting, you said that in your language you don't have that concept of to be. One of the Western concepts in my language that we don't have is the concept of the self. In other words, there is no word in our ancient language. Of course, we've invented one now so we can speak Hawaiian and be translated into English. But in the ancient language, there was no word for I or me or my or mine, because there was no concept of being an individual, a singular person, separate from and unconnected to everybody around them and everybody and everything that they were in. So in the old language, when one spoke about family, and our word for that is ohana, when one spoke about family, one automatically included not only, brother, sister, mother, father, but all the other human blood related and non-blood related, and also the plants and the animals and the colors and the elements that one associated with that family. And speaking of family, that's what we call our family in terms of what other Native American peoples refer to as a clan.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking about a clan, they also talk about whether they're from the Bear Clan or the Raven Clan. And we have that same concept.
Right.
So not only did we not have a concept for the personal, but everything was inclusive and everything was connected. And if you can think about it, living on an island, you had no choice but to be connected with everything around you if you were going to survive. There was no such thing as moving 100 miles away to where the weather was different or where there wasn't any flood or drought. You did with what you had. So your idea about abundance and generosity in nature. Yes, we recognized drought. Yes, we recognized flood. But even in drought and flood, there was an abundance and generosity of other things in nature that corresponded to what we needed in order to keep living. I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Thank you for that. And I want to just also, add to the concept of I and me, my, mine, and ours. These possessiveness, these nouns, these pronouns,
Yeah,
right? And
yeah.
so, I think that what happens when we say me, is we tend to separate. And I've told Jeremy before, when I speak English, I feel like I'm separate from
Yes,
a lot of things. I'm not
yes.
related. So the I is a noun, means you're stagnant, you're titled, and this is who you are. This is what it is. You become a what? You become a thing. And so you are always putting yourself in front of everybody else. And the mindset is that in indigenous cultures, everything else is before the I. So,
Yes.
in other words, what we do is the I turns into a verb. So
Yes.
we are in rhythm with that, right? And
Yes.
and one more thing with that is, and I've said this quite a few times, is when I was in Auschwitz and Birkenau a few years ago, and I was with an old Lakota elder, and after the day was done, I asked him, "Do we have a word for domination?" And he was quick to say, "No word, no concept for domination." And we thought it through, and I said, "Well, because we need to relate." We relate to everything, um, everything houses, everything that man or humans make, everything that has been made from the earth has not value as far as economic. In other words, it's things, all the life around us takes care of us, you see, but we don't appreciate it enough. So when you described that you were on an island, it was that's the mindset of an island. I'm not too sure if there is a word for island in Lakota. You know, we say
Ah,
Turtle Island, but that means it's by itself. But it was needed. Islands are needed so that the whole can exist,
oh,
and
yes.
we think of it, yes, that way. So the domination is not a word or concept. I think this is gets in the way of our being able to relate with natural life as natural human beings, and therefore we become technical human doings because we look to progress, technology, and the American way, right? And the other way that I see is that we have left the organic human being behind. So,
Ah,
there's a separation there. I don't mean to bring that about, but that's what I'm seeing because it wants to do sort of dichotomy, but a duality. You're either for us or with them, and you're not modern enough to be included in the progressive thought that we're going to go fly helicopters on Mars now and pat ourselves on the back. So that's why I, me, my, mine, and ours does not exist.
yes. Oh, okay. Let's talk about dominance.
Hmm.
I think that's an interesting subject and perhaps something that we can also illuminate our audiences about. Because the first thing I thought about when you said dominance, I said, well, wait a minute, because Hawaiians are considered among the fiercest warriors in the Pacific. You don't want to get a Hawaiian angry with you, really.
Yeah.
And among all the peoples of the Pacific, warriors, war abilities, weapons, and war processes were brought to the highest. But there were concepts of waging war in which dominance occurred between groups of humans, but not dominance over the earth, not dominance over the waves or the water or the sky or the plants. It was in terms of warrior and fighting between groups of people, the way we saw it reflected in nature with sharks and other kinds of dominant animals in their environment for survival and for eating and for mating. In our understanding of war, our warriors made it clear that the only way they would engage with their enemies was if they could see them face to face on the battlefield. And we developed weapons like clubs and spears and the garrote in order to defeat our enemies face to face, giving them as much of an equal opportunity to kill us, because there was no honor in killing your enemy when you couldn't see them, when you couldn't touch them, when you couldn't engage with them physically. That is an honorable way of war. And in a sense, that's an honorable way of dominance between groups of people, as we see reflected in nature around us. I am sometimes very sad when I discover that there are now killing drones that can kill 100,000 people in one battle from places where computers are located 3,000 miles away. And we can kill indiscriminately women and babies and the sick and the elderly in that kind of a war and that kind of a dominance. And the thing is that that kind of a dominance as a concept has extended, of course, to nature, where we can kill all the sharks because they've killed a few humans on the East Coast or the West Coast, where we can kill all the bees because the bees are Japanese bees or they're killer bees, and they've killed horses and they've killed humans. So wipe out species because we as humans have dominance over the earth, and we will make it our way, using that word, our.
Wow, wow! It felt like I went through a whole history, a whole history there. And I think about where the etymology of this word "war" came from. I know in the old Lakota lexicon that there was no word for war,
Ah,
because it was our story that we weren't put here to kill each other as human beings.
ah,
And like I said, we can't even be mean in our language, you
right,
know.
right, right, right.
But that changed. It changed because the people of the war who speak the war language are often moved it now to the war against Earth. So
Yes.
the origin of domination comes from the Sanskrit word of their understanding, war. War means desires more cattle. Okay, that's what war does.
Ah,
So then we get to the domination, the dominatio, which is an original Sanskrit word, means
mhm.
dominate, meaning he who subdues, which changes into a Latin term domo,
Ah,
domo. And there's 7 laws behind domination. I can remember now. Domo, which are infinitive verbs. Now think about that: to subjugate, to subdue, to place into subservience, to tame, to domesticate, to cultivate, and to till. And cultivate is colere, which means to colonize. To
ah,
So in a biblical context, to subdue the earth and exercise dominion over all living things. But first, we need to change every life form into things so that we can name it. That's war. That's a subject. That's a cow. That's a whatever. And so in the original language, what we did was we described the how do I say that you described the energy, and then you described the motion of the energy. So basically, with that language, you cannot educate any wisdom out of yourself, right? Out of the human being. But what came was the language we speak now, that speaks in brain spiritually damaged language, in that it holds trauma. It tries to explain freedom, but DOM at the end of it, which is domination. It tries to explain how all human beings behave is power over one another, and that they're able to act or to be done as one wishes in domination. So, so this puts who we are as Native people into this spiritually. The spirituality is being risked, um, and we are saying, well, we used to say unpopular things, and I'm always pointing out salvation point mentalities, that we're always looking for a savior. So this I think it was a movie that came out that said the first weapon drawn in conflict is language. You
mm,
know, so and I go back to the spiritual agnosia, because everything has become religious and in dogma, and hierarchy and domination and authoritative in the Western modern context of science and government and what am I saying? Science, government, and religion.
Yeah.
So and all three of those have an authority that remove us away. And we're not grounded. So we're always talking about raising our consciousness and going to other stars. But yet that consciousness we don't look at here, that this one needs to be how do you say, really understood, learned from the earth. And so that way we can indeed go to these other places where we originated from. And I do know that the Pleiades and that area of Tayamnipa, which is Orion and Pleiades, that's where we come from as Lakota people. My
Oh,
travels, hundreds from where I know indigenous peoples come from that area of Pleiades and Orion. So origin stories are from that place. So we have traveled, but we traveled as energy, not a material container. That this language that I'm feeling I'm talking now is only in context of defining this place, right? When
mm-hmm.
there's words, and I think Jeremy, when he started out, that we have a word called akantu, which means earthman in noun form, but if you put it together, it really means the being from the ancient future now. This consciousness without conscience, like a tree, birds, water, they don't have a conscience. They're not choosing to be right or wrong, they just are. So they're in the consciousness. And so when we speak about warriors as a context, how it was used, yes, the Lakota we had to learn the art of war so that we could not be exterminated by those who lived the warlike way. And we, in the United States, we did defeat the U.S. They threw a quarter of their army at us, and because we knew the land, just as Hawaiians knew the land there, that they were afraid. The foreigners were so afraid because we knew the land. In other words, the earth was backing us up, right?
Yes.
And so that's what we took it as. We wouldn't be here without the earth. It didn't matter what other humans did to us. That was minuscule as what we were still doing to the earth or not doing to the earth as far as paying attention to her. So this is where our intelligence comes from, and that intelligence can outthink any human who thinks technically or biblically or religiously or whatever. Earth we can never outthink
Yes.
Earth, and we
Yes.
can never teach Earth any lesson. You see.
Yes. Oh, Jeremy, do we have time for stories?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, good. Can I tell the story of the origin? Because I didn't know Lakota people also came from the Pleiades.
Oh yeah.
Yes, because one of our major origin stories, and we have many, and one is maybe totally disconnected to the other, but one of our major origin stories is that we came from the Pleiades, which in our language we call Makali'i, the little eyes. And the story goes that there is an earth mother, one of many earth mothers in our pantheon of earth deities. There's an earth mother, Papa. Her name is Papa. Her consort, her spouse, is a god of the sky, of that which is above us, and his name is Wakea. Papa and Wakea live on Mauna Kea, the volcano, the biggest one. And they have a wonderful life, but as time goes on, and of course time is totally relative within the time of the gods, so it could have been a few years or a few million years, Wakea gets itchy and anxious to travel. And Papa finally gives up and says, okay, go already. I'm tired of you giving me all this grief about being bored and wanting to do different things. And he goes, okay, and he disappears, except he disappears for a very long time. And when he finally comes back to Papa, Wakea has a small bundle wrapped up. And he gives this bundle to Papa. And she goes, "Oh, where have you come from?" And he says, "I have gone to Makali'i, the Pleiades." And she opens up the bundle, but it's nothing but a mass of misshapen roots. That's how we translate it from the chant into English, misshapen roots. And she looks at this brown mass of roots and she goes, "Ah, this is nothing." And she throws it in the corner of her garden. Time passes again, and Wakea gets anxious and bored again. And again, Papa tells him, "Okay, go, go, go. Go ahead and have a good time." And he does. He goes back to Makali'i, the Pleiades. And this time when he comes back, it's a bigger bundle, which he gives to Papa. And she's wondering, well, what is this? He comes back with the first bundle. It's just a piece of a brown old root, and now he's giving me another bundle. But this time when she opens it up, it's a little human girl child. And she looks at this little girl, and the girl looks at her and she goes, "My name is Ho'ohoku Kalani." Ho'ohoku Kalani is the star of the heavens, the star from the Pleiades. And Papa is so pleased with this little human girl. And she begins to raise her and teach her. And when the girl is about 4 or 5 years old, she comes running back to Papa and she goes, "I found him. I found him." And Papa says, "You found who?" And she goes, and she points to the corner of the garden where the misshapen roots had been thrown by Papa a few years before, which has now sprouted and grown up into taro. And she goes, "That's my older sibling." Of course, we translate it into English as my older brother, but I don't think my ancestors really had a gender attached to taro. But in the translation, "That's my older brother." So what do we get out of this story? 2 things. Number 1, the first human on earth is a girl. She's a she. And she recognizes that her direct relation is taro. Taro to Hawaiians is like corn to the Indians. It has everything we need. It has food. It has medicine. It has abundance. And it is everything to us. Taro, of course, is what gives us poi, among other things. It's both a famine food as well as a food of abundance. And food, as in your cultures and everybody's indigenous cultures, means everything, because it sustains us. So we get the girl, human, we get the older sibling, the direct blood relation of the most important plant in our culture, and it's all from the Pleiades. Ta-da! I'm so happy that you have the Pleiades as your hometown too.
Wow. It's so great. No, I think that's really the best thing, the commonality of where we came from. But that involves a lot of, you've mentioned quantum physics before. And I think in 1994, there was a group of native people, including linguists, scientists, and writers, and they came to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they came together to understand what they deemed the language of spirituality, to understand, origins, what the West calls myths of who we are. And so once they gathered in 1994, they brought forward these elders who took their time trying to translate, and all together, another man, including a physicist who's alive today, and he said he developed a new language of verbs. So he had this manuscript of, I think, 486 words of verbs, and he was waiting his turn behind these Pima and Tiwa elders, and they were being asked questions, so they were answering as much as they could translate. And it turns out that he started listening, that the man who had the script was listening to the elders, and he said, "What am I doing here? They're already speaking in verbs." So he took his manuscript and he and they were describing the cosmology. A lot of our ceremonies, every one of these ceremonies are describing a creation story, right? And that creation story, the West tends to fragment into science, but the the story is not leaving who we are as indigenous peoples, because it's not speaking of the Big Bang, because our creation story is so soft and so unifying. Rather than bang, we just appeared out of that. Sounds very warlike and trauma filled, right? So when I hear, when I first heard of the Hawaiian Kanaka Maoli coming from the Pleiades, that it soothed me to know that this island and the bigger island of the United States, or Turtle Island, I guess, uh, is Makakea. Makakea is what we call Mother Earth. It's the Turtle Island, the Turtle Earth, Makakea. It almost sounds like what you said, Mauna Kea, and it's amazing. And in some older Lakota, they don't say aloha, but they say ahola. So it's kind of a backwards thing, right? So there's a lot of commonalities you have in that. And when I'm thinking about the quantum physics within our language, this is what we're saying. We don't have an alphabet. Our language is too big for an alphabet. The symbols that are control languages to keep you within the restricted thinking. So the freeness that people feel when they're with indigenous peoples is the energy that we have retained and sustained. And then I think about, okay, so we don't even have concepts in the older language, because who needs concepts, right? And so when we can use the English language, and I've described this one before, is the word for water. You're surrounded by water. In Hawaii is we describe water this way: the mni, the mni, which is mni, is M, that stands for that which is related between you and I and all things. The ni is living. The I is voicing. So when we look at water and we're speaking in the context of water, is we are voicing the living relationship between you and I and all things, because water is the consciousness in all things. It keeps things together. And that's where thought processes come from. We don't grow food, the food grows us, right? And yes, in that appreciation to say that we dominate food, this is why there's GMOs out there, right? But if you think the origin seed, who we are, the 4-year-old, she's now 30-year-old, my daughter, she's now 30 years old. She doesn't remember this, but she asked me the question. She said, Ate, if Mother Earth is our mother, then who is the mother of Mother Earth? And so I appropriately called my mom, my mother, and she said Nasula. And Nasula nearly means that your head, your brain is a seed of the heart. So our language comes from the Chante, which is treeing, living. Our Cha is like the tree, the Te is like living. So living, treeing is a consciousness of the earth. And this is why we cannot separate our language from the earth and make it a technical one that has something to do with theory, because that is not practical mystery to us. This is practical mystery to us. Even if we go back into our creation stories that you described, that beautiful how it came together here, that is something that we didn't educate out of ourselves and didn't create myths, because that is so true. When I'm in Hawaii, that story makes sense to me. It feels, my sense is here, not up here, not some logic coming out of Western democracy 4,000 years ago. As well as you can come to the Black Hills and you can hear our creation story, and that you're just like, wow, we took this route and you took that route to get here. And look how we came out. We asked for the same things, and so did all human beings, that we came out with these 5-fingered star people, right? So our word for man or human being is It's like, so it's stars, and Sha is like a gift. So what we're doing is, when we refer to ourselves, we are saying we are gifts of the stars. We are star beings. So your creation story is exactly that. We are star beings, right? We're not special. We're not a savior, but we are so real that what keeps us real is to be in consciousness and in present with the consciousness. So your story led me to say all these things. Yeah, it's great.
Not only that, but the other thing is that I suddenly realize now you live on a continent. We live in an ocean. We're considered ocean people.
Mhm.
But you and I have connections going all the way back to the Pleiades. In other words, we are connected through time in a cyclical sense of time from eons, millions of years ago. We are descendants. We are blood descendants of star beings, and we are literally related. It didn't occur to me then, because I didn't know your origin story had anything to do with the Pleiades. Oh my goodness!
I know.
Oh,
Yeah, and our
oh
word for yeah.
yes. Let's
Go.
talk about water.
Oh yeah, the mani
Yes, I love that idea.
the voicing the living relationship between you and I, and all things, is basically the intelligence, because
Yes,
whales speak. Sound travels 4 times faster in water.
through water than it does through air.
I
Yes,
know the Kanaka, the Rapa Nui, and the Maori all have this. Even the Samoans, they have this tattooing that they do, especially the females, of navigating. You know,
yes,
and
yes.
that is not in a book. That's his living experience. And I think we tend to try to own information in the sense that we educate that wisdom out of ourselves, that having a tattoo on your hand can guide you in that nature, that beauty of nature, that you get to know it so well that you know what's real and what. And I always say peace with earth, right? Because I think that's what the Western world is missing, is to having peace with Earth, because their domination is allowing them to think in terms of peace on Earth, and that's why we're not getting along. For 4,000 years, there's always been wars with peace on Earth. So now we need, and it's going to happen, peace with Earth. And some of us have not. I don't include myself, but a lot of indigenous peoples have not let peace with earth go, because they still are in the motion, as you say, rhythm with the earth. And so we understand the viruses, the diseases, the wars, the hurry scurry circus that's around us, is that we slow down because earth is only adapted normally to an abnormal situation that humans have caused, right? And so that's what we're speaking of, and the intelligence of water is bringing that to everybody all the time. If we just remember the language that we all used to speak, that's what our bodies are made up of. That's what we desire, and we bathe and we clean with it. So what a just it's just not a subject. Water, to give it a respectful being name like Mini Wichoni, it's a life-giving center of all the stars is water, because we say that water is everywhere. Now science is trying to prove that water is everywhere. But how do we know that water is everywhere in the universe? Yeah.
We brought that idea of water everywhere in the universe with us from the Pleiades. How could we not?
Mm.
We arrived as water beings. For Hawaiians and for all of the other peoples of the Pacific, we make a distinction between fresh water that we can drink, that gives us life, and ocean water that is life itself, because life began in the ocean. And we recognize that. So, for instance, like your people, when you give an offering, you might use a smoke and a feather, and you bless and honor and give, acknowledge with that smoke of that particular plant. We bless with water, but in a container, a natural container like wood or shell or stone, we add fresh water, but we also add salt that we've harvested from the ocean because we want to create the ocean water that is life for us. And we use a tea leaf. It's above my bookcase over here. We use a tea leaf to bless instead of a feather because we recognize that it's not just fresh water; it's ocean water. The crucible of life is ocean water, and that's what we use to bless, to honor, to acknowledge, and to give offering to.
Mm.
Yeah.
That,
But now the ocean is being polluted. I am very upset. We have ongoing contamination of the ocean from the Fukushima disaster. And now we have islands of plastic that is larger than all of the islands of Hawaii put together. We have the continuing contamination and the rape of the ocean fisheries and other kinds of species. And of course, we use the oceans like the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean as dump yards for all of our trash that come from the continents to the ocean. We are in serious trouble.
wow. Do you, I mean, I'm just going to go two places here. When you describe how we got here, it's that we were born in mother's womb, a world of water.
Oh, the world of water, of course.
So we were instructed that the woman would be the life giver in this portal. So we were born through the woman in that world of water. Just like as you say, we got here, we arrived, we came into the ocean, the sphere of the earth. And so when I take that further into the intelligence of, and that required no domination. So when I'm thinking in terms of domination, when we are trying to find ways or solutions to clean up the mess that we have, we get into, well, we better save the earth, you know, so we become very benevolent in the sense that we are God and therefore it's our mess, we got to clean it up. That's true. But the fact, if we just leave it alone in this last year when we left Earth alone, you could see birds that you haven't seen for decades. So if we, that's the answer. What part of the solution is to leave the Earth alone and stop using so much of it. But then there's eventually we'll use it all up. So I would propose something that our language has to change. We have to take the self-centeredness of the human, the anthropocentric human, and stop looking at gloom and doom. Um, and I think part of this is the salvation point mentality that somebody else is going to come and save you, right? Because I don't think that we can actually save the earth. I think we need to get over ourselves from trying to think that we can save the earth, right? So in terms of decolonization and colonization, that doesn't exist in the original Lakota. That's their program. Just like people of color is their program, we are people of culture. We are earth cultures, and the earth does not lie. Therefore, our languages come from an earth that does not lie. And that's why we can't treat each other mean, say mean things, even to whatever. But our myths are made up by those who have lost their umbilical cord with the earth. And so it's not to romanticize the native person because we have our troubles too, you know, especially now. So you and I, as you know, male, female, have our interpretation as much as we can into this language. So I find that the more intelligent I am in this language, the more I'm able to come up with a series of denial and rationalize that it's not me, it's their fault. You know, they never got with the program, but yet has this way of living, the Western way, it has never been conducive in living with the earth. We lost Lehua.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Did you hear all of that? Or enough of that? Did you want to
n-
respond?
I heard enough. I lost the last 60 seconds about, yeah. But I totally understand and I totally agree with you about, yes, I'm worried about our young people today because I was brought up in both Western culture and Hawaiian culture.
Mm.
My grandmother was full blood, and she spoke the old language from 100 years ago. She was forbidden to teach me, so I never learned the language, although I know a lot of words. I don't know the grammar. But still yet, I was able to inculcate the attitudes, the values, the practices, the points of view of understanding the earth and understanding my place in that earth, in that nature.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I'm going to Western schools. At the same time, I'm going to Western universities. So I understand and can appreciate the dichotomy between the two kinds of cultures, as well as where each culture can complement one another. But I'm worried about today's children because the Western culture of consumption, the Western culture of get yours before somebody else does, the Western ideas of making money just for the joy or thrill of making money has caused so many of even indigenous young people to forsake, to not want to learn, to ignore what they see as attitudes and values and practices that do not conform with the consumer society. And I'm worried about that because our young people will take our place very soon. And what's going to happen to our cultures and to the larger society in general?
Well, I think about this mindset of how do you say inquisition.
Ah,
This inquisition, the second inquisition, is honest and has been, and as native peoples in the Western Hemisphere, some will resist and some don't know how to resist, and so it's dividing our people, which is the Inquisition takes you away from the root, and so to be able to burn these 12 million witches and warlocks in Europe to make them non-earthlings into religious salvations, the salvation of religion and the salvaging what's left of the human spirit, is to make them members of a cause and effect, a dualistic system of heaven and hell, right and wrong. And I often think the young people, as I know, that my experience has been actually what the young people are going through now, but in a different manner, is that we have become what we could say the Washichu so
mm,
well that
mm,
we have left who we are now. So we have become the white man. We
mm.
dress, we act, we say we're doing it in competition with the earth, and we're not competing with the earth in the old way. We are in coordination. We are in when collation. I guess the word would be with the earth, and I've learned to be aggressive. I've learned that there are winners and losers. I've learned that I'm naked now. I learned that I'm not who I am. That I'm supposed to be made into somebody else that has only books on. I've learned these things, and it's a sad story, but also underneath it is that I can actually give all of that up. You see, to let go of that
Ah, yes,
and make that fire and grow that food that grows me, and to speak that language again. I think we all, whoever we are, no matter what society or culture we're from, we yearn for that. That's why we immediately go to nature,
yes,
immediately to be healed somehow. Yeah. Mm.
yes. Yes, and you're right. There is a whole generation of the very young that are understanding they have to go back to nature.
Hmm.
They're giving up the GMO foods. They're becoming very conscious of the kind of meat that they eat and why. They're becoming very conscious of trash and throwing away. They're becoming aware that they need to recycle, reuse, and regenerate. And it's across the board. It's not just natives and it's not just Asians, but it's across the board. It's a generational change, which I'm very, very hopeful for. Very hopeful for.
We have a saying that we've been waiting 500 years for this. Yeah, I'm interested in what Jeremy, in his silence, in his blue shirt, is.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Jeremy. Yes, you've been so silent. Oh, I'm so
No, this is
sorry.
great. If I had a way, if I knew of a way to take me off this thing so it could just be the two of you, I would do it. But I'm not that fluent. So, but I guess one sort of question I have for both of you is the importance that music and dance play in your languages that we just don't have. We have music and dance as an entertainment, and there's obviously something about it that speaks to us through feeling that we love to do it. But it's not in our language. Could either of you address like how important that is, and sort of because especially Tiokasin saying that we need to change the language, is that part of the transition? I mean, is there something in that is completely lost to us that would be revolutionary if it were in our language, song and dance?
If I could take this, it's the etymology of culture. It's our origin to dance, to sing, to pray, to not worship, but to recognize that which is energy, that which is other life forms that have made us to equalize, not to equalize, because it's always trying to equalize and keep us in balance. So the irony, which is a balance actually, is that we are struggling now because of the lack of the balance and understanding song and dance in the original languages, which I know for me when I'm in the ceremonies of my people, when especially in the language, there is such a dimensional effect, if I can say that, that it's not sacred or holy, but it's the fact that you bring consciousness into being. You're able to apply consciousness to everything, and everything. What do we say? A wakan. Wakan. It means to consciously apply mystery to everything. And so dance is interpretive. We understand that, but that's too easy of a term. Dance is interpretive. No, the dance is it tells us how to dance. The grouse, the eagle, the bear, all of these understandings have come to us to show us how to finally learn how to live here with the earth. And I think peoples who are trying not to live with earth and trying to take advantage of extractive thought processes are, yes, entertainment. Sex becomes sexy and all of these erotica, and it just gets away from the real origin of who we are. And then we tend to learn abusive language because we don't know how to respect true spirit of dance. And I've seen and I've known and I've movement, not physically, but the movement of that energy and the effects of healing. So everything is medicine when it comes to song and dance. Yeah.
Mm, mm. And what would Hawaiian culture be without the hula and the mele and the uli, without the dance and the chant? They are languages, very, very much. And one of the wonderful things about dance and chant, or dance and song, is that you cannot dance and you cannot sing without being totally in the present moment. In fact, I cannot think of any dance or song, at least the ones I was raised with, and I was a dancer for more than 20 years. And
Mm.
I learned ancient hula, kahiko, back in the 60s and 70s. I cannot think of any dance or chant that did not have words related to nature in it.
Mm.
So that as a dancer, all my motions and all my expressions, my facial expressions and my foot movements and my body movements mimicked some form of nature, whether it was the olapa, the tree that has 5 leaves on one stem and are so light that when the slightest breeze will move the leaves. We call that tree olapa, and that's also the name of the dancer. So that everything I know about hula is what I know about nature. And even today, all the modern hula, as a matter of fact, much of it still, in order to be Hawaiian, still includes Hawaiian words that are totally inclusive of nature. So we sing and we dance in nature, about nature, and we cannot separate ourselves from that. And continuing our chant and our dance and our songs and everything we give voice to is still all about nature
Can I
and
ask you
connects
something?
us and grounds us and keeps us in the moment.
When you're a little girl learning this, because when I think about choreography in the Western sense, there's a song, there's a routine, there's something that people are coming up with in the moment to express that. But when you're doing, choreography, essentially, that is handed down from generation to generation and is essentially from nature. The trees and the leaves are speaking it through you. Is there a difference in the way that you are once you fully get it? The aha moment as a kid, growing up and learning this stuff, and then there's the aha moment where you become that. Is that a different moment of aha and becoming the dance that you know of compared to modern choreography of just
Yes,
sort of coming up with it off the top of your head?
yes, very much. I don't remember starting hula at the age of 4. I don't remember where I had that aha moment, although I do remember one aha moment that had nothing to do with dancing, but it had to do with understanding how dance and chant reflected nature. We have in our language the way northern peoples have many, many words for snow in their language. We have many, many words for rain in our language, as you can well imagine, from the lightest mist to the heaviest driving rain. And one of them is Ka'uakani Lehua, which translated means the beat of the rain on the lehua leaves, the leaves of the tree that produces the lehua blossom. That driving rain produces a constant staccato rhythm. I heard that's a line in a famous song about Hilo on your island, Jeremy. And I heard that song from when I was a little girl, because that song was probably composed way before I was born. But I didn't understand what Ka'ua Kani Lehua meant until I was out on the volcano picking leaves and flowers to make leis with my kumuhula, my hula teacher. Oh, let's see. Oh my God, I was already in my 30s. And it started to rain. So a bunch of us ran under the biggest tree we could find, which happened to be a very, very old lehua. And while we were huddled under there, cold and wet, I heard the rain on the leaves, and that staccato rhythm of the rain finally gave me my aha moment. When I dance, that particular motion, I totally understand what that is now. I totally understand how it feels. I totally understand what it means. I totally understand the temperature of that heavy rain on the leaves. I totally understand the bending of the leaf because of that heavy rain over and over and over. And I totally understand what a relief it is when the rain finally stops and all the leaves glisten with that rain. That is the aha moment.
Mm.
Yeah, means a lot,
Beautiful.
even
And
today.
Tiokasin, you're a sun dancer, yeah?
Yeah.
And so as a sun dancer, is that also a handed down from the sun choreography, or is that an in the moment dance?
It's like you're born with it. You understand rhythm. Sun dancing is so natural, and um, it's like you're being downloaded from the sun,
Ah,
you know,
ah,
and you're understanding, why we are who we are, where we're going, and what we should do. Actually, giving instructions. So when the sun, and I speak very respectful of this because I don't want to distort it, is the wakaja. Wakaja is a cottonwood tree that sends out little balls of cotton into the air. We call it a talking tree because when it rustles in the wind, it's like the leaves that you talk about is talking, right? And it may be stillness, all the other trees around, nothing moving, but the little cottonwood tree is moving. Also, the star is buried in the young cottonwood tree. You could see the star that goes away as it matures. So we know we are in the right rhythm because of the star, of the cottonwood tree, of the talking, of the prayers and wishes that go out as little cotton balls from the cottonwood tree. And we dance around that and pay attention to all the directions, the 260 directions, not four or five or six or seven, 260. 260 songs in that ceremonial way I've heard, 260 dimensions, 260 colors, 260, did I say sounds? So you're always in a state of being surrounded by the universe. So the word we have, wiyukcham, which means thinking or knowing, thought processes that eventually the sun is giving knowledge to the tree, and the tree is our hearts in the same rhythm because our hearts are treating living, that it's understanding the consciousness that is buried in the earth, and the mother earth is a star, and therefore it's in conjunction and dancing in rhythm with all her brothers and sisters that are other planets. A bigger story right there. But when it comes to the individual dancing as a sun dancer, you you go to a place that there is no such thing as gravity, direction, and even understanding. It's too big for our brains to even put in concepts. So, not even a word for perfect. There's no need to explain in any human language, I think, but just to swim in that. So one of our ancestors, Black Elk, he said that the center of the universe is everywhere. And I think Lehua is describing that feeling of the aha, is that everything made sense
mm,
now.
mm,
And that's what we are saying. And if anything, there's a story in all of that wrapped up somewhere, right?
right,
Um, yeah, yeah.
right. Yes.
Just going back to the Pleiades, it's trite, but we watch Ancient Aliens and things like this on the History Channel, which is hilarious, and wonder if aliens came down and helped ancient people build these monolithic things that we can't build, therefore they couldn't build it, therefore aliens must have. And then we argue about whether or not that's racist. But there's a missing component that I think both of you may have gotten to in this conversation, which I'll just put it out there as a question. In nature, we see that animals are born and hatched, and they learn from, of course, their other animals. But some of that knowledge is just inherent knowledge, it seems. They come out with instructions on how to build nests, on how to build, hives, go down the list. How to coordinate, how to move with the earth, where to be and when. All these sorts of things that seem like logical choices or seem like they should be learned action. And in the West, we just say it's instinct, as if that makes sense. But that's just a placeholder for we don't really know how this happens. But I'm wondering if you're is it something that we don't know because we're not interconnecting? Like you have to know things, but when you're interconnecting with nature, is there that type of instruction that comes through from Earth that could lead to the building of these things, so that these things that we think should take time and technology and all that just come in the snap of a finger if you're interconnecting in the right way and you know how to listen. You could build these pyramid structures, these, go down the list, monolithic structures. Is that possible? Do you think? Is that how these things? I mean, are these things built from such a different mind, an interconnecting mind, that when we look at it as Westerners, we think, oh, that had to have taken time and technology and intellect, and in reality, it takes just being silent and having that knowledge sort of come through and work itself out through people. What do you guys think?
You want to go first, Tiokasin?
I could try.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. As you heard us say, that where we originally came from to this origin. So every place is an origin. Every place is the center of the universe. So there is no better or worse that is not contained in our language, because we are equal with everything. So you have so much knowledge at your disposal. I don't like that word, but you have you're in reach of so much knowledge. The universe is buried within you. So when you say instinct, I think of intuition. When you say, civilization, I immediately think of cities, and we're civil and we're city sends, and so we're out of nature. And that's the pull of modern societies, to pull us away from nature and put us into cities, and you see nothing but human beings, and we find rationalities to stay. There's ticks out there, there's bugs out there, there's snakes out there, there's sharks out there, there's danger in nature. But because we forgot the energies of nature, such as a jaguar walking in the jungle, everything becomes silent because the jaguar carries a certain energy. Elders become that energy, and you walk in the room, and if you understand the energy, the silence is the biggest talker, the biggest noise, the biggest communication. And so when it gets back to your question, which I totally forgot by now, but I really think that that what we were talking about, the dance, the language, the songs leading up to this moment, is that Jeremy, everything that native people do, and I'm just making this a blanket statement, that innocence is what we are born with and what we carry through all life. So every moment we live is innocent. And so energy, it doesn't have age. And so there's no young, there's no old, but you can be either closer to the light or further away from it. So every moment is innocent, but we don't acknowledge that innocence within and without. So I think that's the primary instinct, as you call innocence, is an intuition. And how far have we been programmed away from understanding and experience innocences? But we make up the words and put book knowledge, technology, and we're hiding the innocence because that is viewed as vulnerability. But yet, it's the most powerful place you can be, is to be humble with the earth, humble with the worm, humble with the eagle flying, humble with just everything, because we can say we're the last ones here, but we still haven't learned how to take instruction and be shown how to live with the earth, have peace with earth. So we're in the throes because technology is easier, and being who we are is a little harder. So this is why it's a struggle for indigenous peoples, because we don't want to leave the truth of the innocence. So I'll put it that way. How's that?
Mm, mm. Yes, I totally agree with you. And I also understand that in Western science, it looks at something in nature and then it deconstructs that nature and it reduces it down to compartments and individual understandings of each piece in order to understand the whole. But in that act of deconstructing and in that act of reduction, it loses the whole. And the whole could include not only the individual pieces, but the moment in which it was observed, the weather in which it was observed, the time of day in which it was observed, which is one of the things that oral cultures exist as oral. Because when we speak, the understanding of what we're saying comes from all of that around us, the time of day, the temperature of the weather, what we're wearing, how we speak, how our words sound, how our faces look. But Native peoples, yes, Jeremy, you're right. Native peoples looked at nature and they saw what ants did and what bees did and what building a volcano and how it was constructed. And instead of going to the deconstructive reductionary idea of the individual pieces, we looked at nature and built on what we saw and how we saw it and where it was done. It's one of the things that I think America will need to learn is that as in this age of climate change, as places get flooded, as fires burn almost continuously, as hurricanes and tornadoes come with regularity, you can no longer have the American attitude of pioneer independent spirit. By golly, I will take science and technology and I will defeat nature and I will rebuild my house in the same path as the hurricane, the flood, na. We cannot do that any longer. We cannot understand nature as an opponent, as an enemy, as something to be defeated and overcome with technology. We will not win if it's no longer viable to live in the beautiful hills where there are constant fires and then during the rainy season there are mud flows. Then we should not live there any longer. One of the things, among the many things that today's Western youth will need to understand, is that smaller is better, not bigger, and less is going to be a lot better than more. Because that's one of the things the pandemic taught us. Stay home. Don't go out and buy stuff. Don't go shopping at shopping centers because you might get sick. We're going to have to get back to understanding what nature has to teach us and live within its limitations.
When you're saying that, it's reminding me. I just watched Gina McCarthy, who is Joseph Biden's climate advisor, and her entire language now. I don't know if you've been listening to her at all, and either of you, but her entire language around climate change is, in fact, this is like their motto. It's not about Earth, it's about people, right? So this is like their motto is it's not about Earth.
No,
who cares about that? It's about people. It's about how do we grab, it's all this language. How do we, the war on the war. It's like,
war
how do
on
we,
climate.
Right. How do we grab this moment? How do we seize it? How do we commodify it? How do we turn it into electric cars so that America can build bigger and better and still win this fake, war of growth that doesn't matter and has gotten us into the problem in the first place. I mean, how do we survive ourselves when we can't even listen to how we're speaking, like not just change the language at the fundamental core of English, but like even just listen to how we just in day-to-day conversation and how we think we need to appeal to masses of people by using language that is about war, that is about me, that is about never mind the earth, never mind that namby-pamby sissy earth stuff. Because obviously somebody in a think tank had to have thought of this language of like, okay, how do we appeal to people who don't care about the earth? We'll make it about us, and we'll promote that message.
Right, right.
If we can't take a step back and even see that that's what we're doing, and why it matters not to do that, how do we survive us? And is that important to survive us, or does Earth go on and sorry, see ya, us?
I have a feeling that nature is going to change us. This pandemic is a dry run.
Mm-hmm.
There will be many more pandemics in the future. And I'm not talking 1,000 years from now. I'm talking only a few years from now, where more people will die because we have not understood the lessons of what this pandemic was all about. More people are going to die because we continue to pollute the oceans. More people are going to die because we get in the way of all the hurricanes and the fires and the floods. There's been a tremendous effort to change Western attitudes and values about how they view nature and about how they view themselves and about how they live in the world today. And nothing has seemed to really have caught on to change the larger masses of people. I talked previously about the much, much younger generation that I'm meeting who understand that we have to change. And hopefully that will make a difference. But in the meantime, it is difficult for me to imagine that anything we say right now will actually change hearts and minds about how to live in this world. I am fearful that it will take the deaths of millions through things like pandemics to make people understand how to live within nature.
Wow, you see the movements of nature, Maka'ina, Mother Earth, how she takes care of populations, and we can say conspiracy theories all we want, but in the history of her, Mother Earth is she, if there's too much deer in one place, there's too many squirrels in one place, is that she will cull, she doesn't deal well with domination. So
Yes.
the human are dominating, so she's not going to deal well with that. And it's
No.
true. We can say wars, we can say pandemics, we can say all these things, but they're actual things that we have brought about because of our lack of attention to the earth. And again, we're at war with the earth, and we're at war with anything she comes up with, virus. So will we be at war with anything in the future to help us survive when we're constantly at war with ourselves as humans? So to allow us to continue to overuse technology, it showed up in Fukushima, where I've been to several times, in Japan, and in how they, I've seen the effects of that. Is that mindset which brought it to Japan is still present. The salute that was here before 1940, when my mom was a young girl, was the same salute as Hitler used in the Nazi Party. It was not the hand over the heart. It was the one that we see in the documentaries. So yes, people can change on the outside, but it's going to take more than just that to change. And Mother Earth, it's true that Lehua said she's changing. We're out of step. She's already in the paradigm shift.
Yeah.
She's changed it already for us.
She's changed it already.
Can we catch up? Can we catch up with her lessons, as you say?
Well, that is the perfect place to leave it for now. And thank you both, Tiokasin Ghosthorse and Lehua Lopez, for splaining to me and to the larger world, and really for just doing this taking this winding journey in the last hour and a half. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you for doing this.
Mahalo. Meke aloha pumehana. To you and Carol.
Yeah.
And now there's a little yellow bird trying to get my attention in the window again. This happened the other day. Crazy.
The message.
Yeah. The message. You got to pay attention, Jeremy.
I know.
All right. No, thank you. Nice meeting you, Lehua.
It was nice meeting you. I'm going to meet you soon, I hope.
Yeah, soon. And Jeremy, thanks for bringing us all together.
Oh, Jeremy, you're a sweetheart. Yeah.
Of course.
All right.
This concludes today's program for the Living Mystery Symposium. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to give back, you may give back not to us, but to some charitable organizations. Lehua Lopez recommends the Ala Kahakai Trail Association. So if you'd like to donate money to the Trail Association, please take a look at the link that is popped up on your screen right now. When you go there, you're donating to the Hawaii People's Fund at hawaiipeoplesfund.org, but you're doing it on behalf of the Ala Kahakai Trail Association, so please just note that in your description for your donation. And if you would like to donate somewhere on behalf of Tiokasin Ghosthorse, the organization he is a part of, Simply Smiles, which is up on your screen right now, simplysmiles.org. And for a full list of all the speakers' requested charities, you can find them at jalonproductions.com. Thank you for your giving. Thank you again for showing up here with us tonight. And do come back tomorrow, beginning at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. That's noon Central Time and 10 a.m. if you're on Pacific Time. We'll be kicking things off with Dr. Dennis McKenna, followed by Jeffrey Kreipel and Whitley Strieber. All presentations are about an hour long, with a 10-minute break between each. All right. We will see you tomorrow in a new live stream feed, wherever you're watching this from. And then we'll see you on Sunday for the roundtable chat, where we will be taking your questions. Good night, everyone.